Are raccoons becoming more domesticated? Let's talk about this. People know I love raccoons, and people know I love talking about domestication, and then I've got opinions about it. So loads of people have been messaging me to show me this new article talking about how raccoons have become domesticated or are becoming domesticated. The idea of whether raccoons are becoming domesticated or not really depends on how you define domestication. A lot of people these days tend to throw the word domestication around to mean all kinds of things and encompass all kinds of animals and creatures and behaviors and things like that. They essentially use it as a synonym for coevolution with humans. So any kind of symptom or sign that genetically is changing an animal or a plant in some way that's being interacted with humans, they consider that a kind of domestication. I disagree with using the word domestication as a catch-all for the ways that animals and plants have changed through interacting with humans. To me, domestication should be limited to those animals and plants that have been selectively bred or force bred or coerced bred by specific human societies that exert more control over their environments than others. One of the biggest conflations from my perspective of domestication is something called pro-socialization. So a lot of times in evolution, you have creatures like the cat is a prime example, or even the dog, who initially become more pro-social towards humans because they are interacting with like a food surplus or, like scavengers in the case of wolves scavenging off human kills, or grain storage and the rodent problems that come with grain storage in the way of cats. These animals become more closely associated with humans. They become more what we call tame, more friendly towards humans, which is one aspect of domestication. However, it depends on how you define domestication. So you can have mutualism, which pro-socialization can happen through natural selection, or you can have tameness or pro-socialization that is force-bred into animals to make it harder for them to escape or easier to hold captive. The difference is natural selection versus artificial selection. Artificial simply meaning force-bred by humans for human purposes. Characteristics that come along with pro-socialization are often called neoteny, which there's a whole slew of things, physiological changes that happen through neoteny. It's essentially an extension of childhood. Examples in dogs are like puppies have, floppier ears, and they stay floppy for their whole lives. Cats, domesticated cats, meow to humans, and they maintain meowing throughout adulthood, whereas the majority of cats alive, wild cats, do not meow in adulthood. You can search, neoteny and learn a lot about that. It's an interesting thing. But the idea is just that it makes things sort of more babied. And for some reason, that increases pro-socialization or vice versa. So the more animals tend to become more pro-social, the more it seems they continue to have features that are characteristic of younger stages of their life. But these are all things that happen through natural selection, not forced breeding. And to me, again, while domestication, forced breeding, may be easier towards animals who've become more pro-social. So for instance, the wolf became hyper-social towards humans and became closely related to dogs, but never had a leash until about maybe 10,000 years ago. We don't actually know. The oldest evidence of a leash is a cave painting that's about 9,000 years old. The main point I'm trying to make here is that there is a distinction between mutualism in evolution and captivity or parasitism in evolution. And for an animal to control another species' breeding, specifically to breed them so that they're better or more useful for humans, to me is a type of parasitism. And you can put any kind of value of good or bad on that you want. I'm just looking at it from a biological lens. The more you manipulate and breed an animal for a specific cultural purpose within humans, the less likely or less resilience they have in an environment without humans or in a more than human world, which the world is more than human. So by domesticating, you're alienating creatures. By force breeding creatures, you're alienating them from the larger ecosystem in which they are a part of as well, and holding them within a smaller frame of captivity within human society. Even in the official scientific study of the raccoons that shows that they have signs of neoteny, or pro-socialization towards humans and the physical changes that happen with that. They define domestication at the very beginning of that article as like a broad term that just means like humans interacting with other species and the changes that happen. I heavily disagree with this, and I'm not alone. There's a really great chapter in the book called Domestication Gone Wild by anthropologist Anna Tsing, and the name of the chapter is called 9 Provocations for the Study of Domestication. She also, in that article, argues for a more specific definition of domestication, because when you make it that broad, you lose all of the important aspects of domestication that lead to its own criticisms. So by getting rid of the definition of selective breeding, basically you just open up domestication to mean anything at all. And then you're not allowed to really look and examine the complications that come from selective breeding. There's no longer a term that really describes just that and what comes along with it. So I really agree with Anna Tsing there. And it's nice to have that as sort of the bookend chapter of that book, Domestication Gone Wild, because it doesn't really define domestication, and people are using it in all these different ways that drive me mad. Because without a clear definition of domestication, there's no clear, concise way of even really talking about these different things. So are raccoons domesticating themselves or whatever? It just depends on how you define it. From my perspective, no, they're just becoming more pro-social through natural selection. If we were to start breeding raccoons to be more pro-social for the purposes of holding them captive, then they would be domesticated. I hope that makes sense and clears things up for you.